Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Sugar Pills, a practical guide to self care. As always, I am your host, Candy Washington, and I cannot wait to help you lead a more joyful life. And before we dive into today's episode, which I am sure will be a very inspiring conversation with Tonya Lester, be sure to check out the description box or the show notes below if you need more support. We have our Journey to Self Love journal along with courses and one-on-one coaching. And don't forget to grab our free self-love guide and get on our newsletter as well. Everything is linked down below. So with that, let's dive into today's conversation. So Tonya is a licensed clinical social worker, a private psychotherapist, a Psychology Today contributor, and author. And for over 16 years, she has taught couples and individuals how to manage their minds and emotions, develop relationships that are mutually respectful and supportive, and approach decision making and communication with clarity and courage. So, welcome, Tonya.
Thank you so much for having me, Candy.
Yeah. So, do you want to tell us a little bit more about yourself and also your journey and what led you into this work that you do?
Sure. I'm a psychotherapist in Brooklyn, New York, and I've done this for a lot of my adult life. Although initially I was an actor, and I think that what the two things have in common is just really a lot of interest in human behavior, what makes people tick, and relationships. Right? The quality of our relationships is the quality of our life, and so if I can help support people in building their relationships, either individually or as couples who come see me, I feel like that's important work that I'm honored to do.
Absolutely. And what are some indicators that our relationships need work? Because I know sometimes we don't even have the awareness that something is wrong or unhealthy or dysfunctional because it's been normalized. Like, well, this is just how it is. I just have to put up with it, or this is as good as it's going to get. So, what are some of the things that can be going on or happening that we're experiencing that could kind of tap into that awareness of, hey, you know what? Something's got to change here. Maybe my relationship isn't healthy. And what are some things that I can do to get to a better place?
Sure. So I think there's kind of two buckets that most of those sort of indicators would fall into. One is if you feel like you have to suppress or hide a lot of yourself from your partner. That, of course, is a red flag. Right? We usually go into partnerships because we're seeking emotional intimacy and a feeling that someone is really deeply on our team and can see us and can see the parts of us that we love about us, as well as the parts of us that we wish were different, and can kind of accept, not that they have to love every single part of us, but that we're accepted and seen.
Yes.
So a red flag I see happening a lot is someone who feels like they have to be extremely careful about what they share, hide a certain part of their life, manage their partner's reactions very carefully. So sometimes there can be a lot of over accommodating and a lot of sort of planning and gentle nudging, as opposed to feeling like they can be very honest and straightforward, and not in an attacking way, but in a like, this is what's happening for me, this is what I would like. And I think that very often people fall into patterns of like these subtle shifts and adjustments, and then they wake up having been in the relationship for quite a while thinking, oh, this person doesn't even know me because I haven't been sharing who I am, or this relationship is so stressful because I have to behave a certain way all the time in order for things to feel smooth and good. So that's one bucket. Another one is sort of on the other end of that is, do you feel like your partner gets your A game? Or do you feel like you kind of are acting out on your partner? Do you often feel like you have to apologize for bad behavior? Do you feel like maybe sometimes you intimidate or scare or manipulate your partner? Sometimes we are reenacting either relationships we saw growing up that aren't healthy or our own past trauma in a way that's really destructive. So it's not that I have to be perfect, not that I can't make any mistakes, but do I feel like I'm taking full responsibility of my actions and my emotions in this relationship, and with a partner who can do the same? And that's what emotional maturity is. And if you feel like, oh, it's just when I get really angry, I can't be responsible for what I say, or, it's because, they should know I'm jealous. Like, no, none of that. That's nonsense. Right. So those are the two buckets. I'd put those warning signs in.
Definitely. And it seems at the core of both of those is communication, like communicating what your needs are, and then also almost a lack of self-love and knowing yourself. It's like if you feel like your partner doesn't know you, but I think the real question is, do I know myself, and am I able to communicate and share that in a safe way with my partner? So what are some things that we can do for saying, like you said, you're finding yourself in your relationship that your partner doesn't see or appreciate you, or you're withholding that of yourself, instead of saying what my partner isn't saying? How can we sort of take that power back and say, well, what can I do to show up more fully for myself?
100%. That's a great question. So it's important to challenge the beliefs we have that are keeping us silent in the first place. And one thing I see come up with clients a lot is this idea that there's a binary choice we have when we speak up to our partner, which is either I say nothing or I say it so gently and I'm so careful that I'm essentially mute, right? In this relationship, or I am lashing out and being mean and extremely aggressive. And if you are someone who's fallen into that mindset, it's very, very useful to see a therapist, to do a lot of journaling around what these invisible scripts are that you're carrying around in your mind, and to notice how you're thinking about it. Like, I had someone who didn't want to tell their mother-in-law to only buy things on the registry, like didn't the mother-in-law had a very strong personality and very strong sense of her own aesthetic. And I said, oh, well, what if you told her that it was just important to you that the nursery looked like it belongs in the rest of your house, and to please stick to things on the registry, and that would mean a lot to you? And she was like, I can't just tell her that I hate her and her taste is terrible. And I was like, that isn't what I was suggesting. Yeah, that wasn't what I said at all. So I think people get very into their head about sort of what's allowed and how people will take what they're hearing. So if you really struggle with this, certainly I recommend getting support, but you can also sort of write down ahead of time, and you can use a framework of, this is so simple. Just, I want to share what's going on with me, and I have this request. And almost anything can be put into that frame and be neutral, right? Like we can say, even something like, we can say, when you drink too much, I find myself getting really nervous and feeling edgy and upset. And my request is that we just don't drink when we go out together anymore. I'm not going to tell you what to do with your life, but it's too agitating for me. Right? Like that is saying something important, right? But that's not accusatory. It's not demanding that the other person take responsibility for you. It's saying, this is what's okay with me. This is what's not okay with me. And I like the framework a lot of saying, instead of like, you're making me so angry, you can say, I notice that I get upset when this happens. And so here's how I'm going to deal with it. And this is my request of you. And you can say yes or say no, but then I'm going to make my decisions from there, right? I'm not going to just try and manage you, and I'm not going to pretend it's not happening.
Oh, I love that. That is so powerful, because what came up for me when you said that was it was not putting the other person on the defensive, like you're wrong and this is what you're doing wrong. You're putting the power back in your position, saying, well, this is me and this is how I feel, and this is how I'm going to show up for myself. And then I'm offering you in a loving way this boundary that I have in the form of a request, right? And you can 100%. Either participate in that boundary or not participate in that boundary, but I'm telling you, this is how I'm going to love myself and love you at the same time, and you can opt in or opt out.
That's right. Yeah.
Oh, I love that. That's 100%. Super powerful. That's super powerful. And I know you have a book, like, don't worry about being difficult and to speak up. Do you want to talk about that? Because I love that. Like I'm personally, I used to be very, very codependent. Like I could not speak
Mm,
up. I could not say no. I was hustling for my worthiness all over the place, looked at it in the last place, which is obviously within. So
yeah.
I just think that your book is going to be a game changer for people who have suffered in the past the way I used to. So do you want to talk about it?
Yeah, sure. It's precisely for people who are suffering in exactly the way you're talking about.
Yep.
What I was finding in my work is a lot of women, not men also end up in this position, but
Mhm.
I think that women, there's so much socialization around being responsible for relationships and not having anyone get upset with you and being assertive, being called being angry or aggressive, and all these sort of tropes that women are dealing with. And I would find in my work when I was offering something like, okay, let's explore this a little bit. What's the simplest, most direct, efficient thing you could say?
Mm.
And to me, it would be very mild. It would be like, yeah, we have different plans for Christmas this year, and they would be like, as though I had suggested throwing a hand grenade in the middle of their family room. And what I kept hearing over and over is like, I don't want anyone to think I'm being difficult. And
Yep.
it really got to the point where I was thinking, why? What's so bad about being difficult? And so much of this is back to what I was saying at the beginning. It's if we don't share what's going on with us and what we're thinking about, no one knows who we are, right? And relationships, if good relationships are the bedrock to a good life, sharing and being honest, and we can do that in a tender way, right? And so allowing ourselves to be seen and really wanting to see other people, and that vulnerability, that's the bedrock of healthy relationships, right? That's the bedrock of emotional intimacy. And it's with a partner, it's with your mom, it's with your best friend, right? These are in all of our relationships. And sometimes I think women get the message that no one else should sort of have to deal with us, right? Like all of our stuff should be handled. We should handle it internally, and maybe we'll announce after we're all squared away and it's all over that something had happened in the past, but that no one should see our messy middle. And I think that is very, very detrimental to women's mental health. And I think it hurts relationships. And I think it hurts relationships for men and women, because I think that everybody wants emotional intimacy. Like that's a very basic human need. So so be difficult was like my cry of the heart to change
Yeah.
these relationships. Oh, and to add, Candy, once I started writing the book, I was like, oh, I do this. Like I do all of these things that I advise people not to do. I'm sure you find that as well. And so it was also
100%.
a process for me. I had a funny thing where someone was being very rude in a in a movie theater, and I was like, I wanted just to say, could you? This person had a flashlight going and I wanted to say, could you turn off the flashlight? But I'm very conflict averse. And then I was like, I am writing a book called Be Difficult. I can politely ask someone to please turn the flashlight off in the movie theater. Right.
Yeah.
And as soon as I did, everyone around him was like, thank you. Thank you. But it was hard because he was irritated, and I hate that, but we need to normalize people
Yep.
speaking up in a way that isn't hostile. Yeah. So leaning
One
into healthy conflict.
100%. I know you also have the myth of like the low maintenance woman. And I tell you, back when I was in my codependent days, that was like me to a T. Like I was the friend that, oh, where do you want to where do you want to go to dinner? Oh, it doesn't matter wherever you want to go. It's cool. Like it's fine. It was easy. I was like the best friend, the best daughter, the best girlfriend, but never like asking, or I didn't never wanted to be needy or anything like that. But then I realized you're a human being, and having needs isn't being needy. It's just being real. And I used to believe, because like your work just was like really hitting home. I had the complete delusion of what authenticity was. I thought, I'm so authentic. I'm just so everything, nothing bothers me. It's so cool. And it's just like, no, that's A, not the actual definition. So get a dictionary. And B, that's delusion. That's
Yeah, it's a
numbing.
lie.
That's coping. That's not good. That's self-sabotage. It's all of the wrong things. Where truly being your authentic self is saying, I like this, I don't like this. Yes, that's okay with me. No, it's not okay with me. It's knowing yourself and dating yourself and getting clear on who you are and also getting clear on who you're not. And then being able to have that safe vulnerability and intimacy with friends or a romantic partner or family and say, hey, you know what? This is who I am, and you don't have to like it, but I really want you to love it, and
Yeah.
I want to love those bits about you too. So
I want you to know it, right?
I want you to know
see
it.
Like,
Yeah.
this is
Yeah.
who I really am. Yeah.
This is who I really am. Yeah. So do you have any other guidance for women who might find themselves in that low maintenance category where they just sort of live their life on default mode? I just default to you, default to what you want. Like,
Yeah.
what are some things that they can do to start to get to know themselves and get that confidence to show people that?
First, I would offer that being low maintenance it's buying into the idea that if you don't cause any trouble, that people will be loving and loyal to you forever.
Yep.
And it doesn't even work, right? Like, if it worked, I might be like, okay, well, if staying together is more important than anything else, I guess that'll probably work. It doesn't, right? We think of all these tropes of like long suffering wives who are left in middle age for the younger version, and, or the kind of put their head down and work person who, never gets ahead, but always does what's asked for them. And then the cocky young upstart like swoops in and takes the promotion, right? We're not even rewarded for it in the long term. We are in the short term, but that's just conflict avoidance, right? So first we have to call it what it is. You're just afraid of conflict. It's not that you're actually low maintenance. And then it's degrading, right? I don't think they call men low maintenance, right? It's I have a line in my book that like lawn care can be low maintenance, like maybe a car could be low maintenance. A human being isn't supposed to be low maintenance. Like it's degrading, right? Who wants to be, it's like AstroTurf. Like, no, I want to be a beautiful garden that has to be carefully tended to, right? It doesn't help you get what you want being low maintenance. So again, I think that the way to look at this is it doesn't have to be extreme. The pendulum does not have to swing completely the other way where you feel like you're stamping your feet and not like being collaborative, right? Collaboration is really important. But it's just a good idea to practice, right? If you are the one who always says, anywhere, like I'm happy to go anywhere you want to go, it's like, it sounds so basic, but it's pick the restaurant, because your friend is going to say, where do you want to go? And you're going to want so badly. It's going to feel like a real emotional risk. So let's not pretend it doesn't, right? It sounds so little, but you're going to feel anxious. You're going to have this instinct to say, I'd love sushi, but never mind if you don't like, instead of just saying, how does sushi sound? Right. And it doesn't mean like your friend says, oh, I'm actually allergic to fish. You say, well, I said sushi, it's not like that. It's just saying, oh, okay. Well, then how about, then you kind of work it out. And it certainly doesn't mean that you're no longer open to what other people need and want. It's this idea that because you know who I am, because you're clear on where I'm coming from, I can be generous with you because I know you're going to be generous with me, right? And then again, we're in this like healthy feedback loop of, I'm meeting my husband for dinner after this, and he has this restaurant he loves, and I'm always like, But tonight I was like, it's your turn. I know where you want to meet. I will see you there. I don't even have to ask you, and that it creates this positive feedback loop where next time, he'll be like, oh, he'll jump right in to say, I want to go where you want to go. So
I love that. And what came up for me when you were saying that is that's what creates an interdependent relationship where it's okay for me to say tonight we'll go here, and then next time we'll go here, rather than one person always deferring to the other one
100%.
and the one person always coming from the place of, authority on the situation. I love that. And I know for me, I used to hate it if anyone said I was being selfish or and I know you can talk about this, but the like gaslighting and the love bombing, where for me it would be, well, you're just being very sensitive. I grew up in a household where if I had any pushback, because we all had our roles in my household, and for me it was the straight A, said nothing, did nothing, perfect, never got in any trouble, perfect little girl. So anytime I said something, it'd be like, oh, you're just being sensitive. You're just being too sensitive. You're just being too sensitive about it. And so do you have any other, examples or red flags of that type of things where your sense of self is being eroded because people around you are saying, oh, you're being too sensitive, or you're taking it the wrong way, or you're overreacting, or things like that? Are there any other signs for that?
Yeah. It's very hard if that's your home, right? Because when you're a child, that's the water you're swimming in. And so you're like, okay, I guess I'm too sensitive. Like that's what the water's like in here.
Yeah.
And so there's sort of two different areas here where a family of origin issue so you grew up, it sounds like it was like, say nothing, need nothing. Right.
Yeah.
And that's a very specific kind of mantle, right? That your family is putting on you unintentionally. I'm sure there was a lot.
Yeah. Oh yeah. No, they're lovely. We're very close.
Yeah. And when we talk about family stuff, we're just looking at patterns. It's not to like make anyone the villain or anything. It's like, what are patterns? And everyone has like their role that they're playing.
Yeah.
So I mean, I'm sure for you, it's been a real journey of looking at like, oh, this is why I do that. And certainly therapy can help with that. And journaling can help with that. And sort of taking that wise mind or stepping into that observing self to notice like, what are the relationships I always end up in? Like, what are the complaints I always seem to have? And then obviously I'm bringing an energy to this that I need to look at if I'm not happy in how this is going. So you correct me where I'm wrong. But what I imagine is you suddenly noticed that you always second guessed what you were feeling, like that you'd have the feeling and then immediately start talking yourself out of it. Right. And then it's even harder to speak up because you actually don't even know what to speak up about, because you spend all your time going, oh, that hurt my feelings. You're being too sensitive, right? Because you have this internalized voice, or you shouldn't feel that way because they were tired that night, and you have this whole, so that's the other thing. You're having the whole conversation in your head without having it with the other person, right? Who could maybe clarify a little bit what they actually mean. So so we all have stuff like that we come out of our families of origin with. You also can look at, if you're in a relationship, in addition to seeing is there something that seems to keep happening, but we can look at whether we're feeling resentful, whether we feel exhausted and sad, whether we feel jealous of what other people have. I call these the weather vane emotions, and we always have them because it's a weather vane, right?
Yeah.
It's like, what am I missing in my life that I'm jealous? Or what is happening that I'm resentful? Resentment in particular is always that you didn't set a good boundary.
100%.
People with good boundaries never feel resentful, right? Yeah. It's like, oh, I let something happen that I shouldn't have. Something has been crossed, and now I need to fix, and now I need to make a repair. But those are we have to stay aligned and aware of our internal emotional experience. And that takes some practice. Again, we're kind of taught to like numb out or to distract ourselves or to, have not even enough time, like busyness, or we're on our phone all the time to think and really check in with ourselves. And that's where I think if you can check in with yourself, if you can notice how you're feeling, and if you can say, what is this feeling telling me about my situation? That's how we know when we need to make a change or repair or speak up.
No, that's so true, especially with resentment. Like I know sometimes people will like with the boundaries, it's like, well, I always say yes to you. I always defer to you. I always do so much for you. And then the one time you have the courage to say, can you do this for me? And the person just is living their life and they're like, oh, well, no, I can't. Then you get upset and you get angry and you get mad and resentful because it's like, how dare you not betray yourself the way I always betray myself for you, you know?
Right. 100%.
Really
Yeah.
in that situation going on.
And if I'm not allowed to say no to you, then you're not allowed to say no to me.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And so then we're also just, I mean, of course they can just be living their life, but we're also, maybe they're setting a boundary and actually they're allowed to do that.
They're allowed to do that.
People
Yeah.
are allowed to do that too.
100%. So how, do you have any advice for dealing with that dynamic within your relationship with, your romantic partner or your friendships, but also with children? Do you notice that with any parent to child dynamic?
Can you say a little bit more about that in the parenting which way, like to kids to parent or parents to kids?
Like parents to kids, like if you notice that your child doesn't really speak up when they want something, or if you notice that your child isn't communicating effectively or is displaying any of these type of like codependent, scared of being difficult, scared of speaking up, not setting boundaries with people, is there anything that you can do to sort of step in or help out with that so they don't grow up having those same challenges?
Yeah, completely. The main thing we can do with our kids is to be curious about their experience, be there for them when they need to talk, name what we see is happening in a way that is checking in with them. So that can be like, oh, I saw that, so-and-so didn't say hi to you at breakfast or something. Yeah. Is there, and then now you seem a little bit sad. Is there anything you want to talk about? We want to leave it open, and we can also help them come up with scripts. We can role play with them how they want to be talking to people and ask them how they want to be supported. A hard thing with parenting is either missing something completely or seeing something and totally jumping in. And I think we're often reacting to our own childhoods, and usually the pendulum has swung too far one way or the other way. And as kids get older, so much of it is about respecting their boundaries, actually, and checking in with them. I'll share, I have a funny story about my 13-year-old daughter. I was very people pleasing as a kid, no surprise. And she is kind of people pleasing, but she said that a friend had done something to her, and I went total mama bear. Like, I was like, there's always a problem with this person. And, I don't think you can trust her. Like, I was activated, and it was my stuff from my childhood friendships. And my daughter, 13 years old, said, Mom, sometimes when I talk to you about my friends, I just want you just to listen and vent. And I appreciate that you're trying to protect me, but right now I just want you to listen. And if I want advice on how to handle it, I will ask you. I was like, whoa. I was like, Francesca, that was such good boundaries.
Yes.
So hopefully we, so much of having kids who have good boundaries and can speak up for themselves is having a relationship with them where they can do it to you.
100%.
Right. And you can talk to me, you can tell me anything, and we can work out anything as long as we're respectful for each other. It doesn't mean you can act out any way, but you can say anything, and that we can kind of find our way to a solution together. And so your main source of teaching is that interaction by far.
I love that. It reminds me of that Brene Brown story where she talks about she was like really busy and she was doing all this, just, doing one thing and the next thing. And like, I think one of her children, I think it was her son, had a swim meet and the family was going to go. And she was like, I'm just really tired. And she was like, I'm just not going to go. So she doesn't go. And then like the next week there's an event or like a dinner that the family's having. And the son is like, well, I don't really want to do this. I want to do something else. And she's like, oh, okay. And he's like, yeah. He's like, I didn't know we were allowed to say no. Like, I didn't know we were allowed to opt out of something. So it really reminds me of what you're saying, where the children
Yeah.
are like, hey, you know what? Like, I'm allowed to speak up and create a boundary and say, this is what I need from you. This is how I need you to support me in this situation. And I think that's just like so
100%.
beautiful. Absolutely.
Totally. Yeah.
100%.
It's
Yeah.
true modeling, right? And yeah.
100%. Yeah. And I really felt that when she was like, he said he didn't know that he was allowed to say no. Because I think a lot of us feel like we're not allowed to say no. Or if I do say no, or if I do push back, or if I am difficult,
Mm-hmm.
the underlying fear is that, like, well, then somehow I'm not going to be enough and you're going to leave me. It's that like abandonment fear of
It's
like,
the abandonment. It's so
if I
primal.
so if I have any type of pushback, then like you're not going to want to be my friend. You're not going to want to date me. You're not going to want to love me anymore because now you have to maintain me and I have needs and I have wants and I have all of this other stuff. So it's easier for me to give rather than have to like need anything, because as long as I'm doing for you, then I'm of value to you and then you
Mm-hmm.
won't ever leave me, which
That's right.
obviously is a fantasy and a myth and all of that stuff. Because like you said, yeah, you get the reward in the moment, but it's not even a reward. It's just the conflict aversion. But in the end, you'll probably get left because you're not really being
You
yourself.
might be, that's for sure. And then you'll have a lot of regret, right?
And you
About
have a lot of
all of that time ahead of
mm-hmm.
that. Yeah. And I almost can't overstate that fear of abandonment and this,
Mm-hmm.
very primal fear of being left and being kind of like voted out is so deep within us. And I've had this experience myself and talked to a lot of people where sometimes you even need to say something to someone and you don't even, it's like, what am I so afraid of? I don't think they're going to punch me in the face, or in a
Exactly.
lot of cases, I don't think we're going to get divorced, what am I so afraid of? And
Yeah.
then it's almost like I would almost rather be sick with worry or
Uh-huh.
anger. I'd almost rather make myself sick than have this difficult conversation. And we have to really be aware of that tendency in ourselves and really figure out what we want to say. That's the clarity piece. And then have the courage to say it and to say it to the person who needs to hear it
100%.
instead of to everybody else and not the person who
And
needs to
not
hear
the
it, which is what we also do. Yeah.
100%. Do you have any guidance on if you find yourself in a relationship and you see that your partner is the one who has the codependent issues and the fear of abandonment and all of that? Because I know me and my partner once, when we first started dating, we would go on walks together, and then one day he was like, oh, like, do you really want to go on the walk? And I was just like, well, I'll go if you want me to go, but like I don't have to go. He's like, really? He's like, I can just go and it's okay for you to stay. And I was like, yeah, I don't care. Like, I'm only going because you want me to go. Like, I don't really care. Go. He was like, really? That would be so good, but because in his last relationship, like, it would be a fight if he wanted to go on a walk by himself.
Okay. Even
So
just take that little bit of time.
yeah, and to
Yeah.
me, I was like, "What? I don't care. Like, knock yourself out. I'm gonna go watch The Housewives. Like, I don't care. Like, do whatever." And so, are there anything that we can do if we see our partner, never picking the restaurant or always deferring or never having an opinion, and we kind of see that in them, and we're on the receiving end of it?
Yeah. I think we can just invite them to share around, and the frame can be, I feel like you keep a lot of yourself from me. And I feel like you don't share your opinions and thoughts about things. And I care about you a lot. And I'm really here to know you. And sometimes I feel like you withhold a lot from me. And I think we could get closer if you didn't. And is there something I'm doing to block that process for you? Or is there a way I can make it easier for you? But that's about it, right? Because people are responsible for themselves. So certainly you can say that. And the other thing is normalizing, like, to use your example with your partner, it would be okay if he said to you, listen, I need to get lost in my thoughts. I want to take a walk on my own. I'll be back in an hour. And let's say he did that and you felt like you hadn't seen him all week and you'd really been looking forward to this time together. And then you're finally together and he wants to spend an hour on his own and you are deeply, deeply hurt. that's how it goes, right? Like we're
Yeah.
we're humans. We all have different needs and expectations. And so for him to come back and you to say, I know I said it was okay, but I want to share with you that I felt hurt because I was excited to spend time together. And I kind of feel like we finally got to spend time together and you like wanted to go do your own thing. And obviously I appreciate your speaking up for what you need. And I'm not, obviously you can take a walk. I'm not trying to control what you do. I just want to share that I'm feeling a little hurt. I feel a little wounded. And probably that vulnerability will open your partner to say, oh man, I can see that. I was worried about that, but I just feel like I'm so ruminating on this thing that happened at work. And I just felt like I'm not going to pay attention. And I just wanted to take this walk and shake it off. Right. And so now you've both shared and now you can just move on with your evening, so it's not to say, I think where we fall into traps is this idea that some feelings are not okay, some experiences are not okay, and that we have to decide whether we sort of have the right to be angry before we say something. And we don't. Like we're never allowed to lash out and be abusive. We are always allowed to say what we're feeling. And I like to call it speaking for your feelings instead of from your feelings, right? So from your feelings is, you don't love me. We have one night together and you just left for a walk by yourself. That's speaking from your feelings. Speaking for your feelings is, I feel sad and kind of rejected that you basically took off right when you got here. And I just want to share that I feel rattled about that. And I want to talk about it. I want to be able to share how I'm feeling. That's speaking, for your feelings. And that can be very productive.
I love that. It can be productive, but I think that level of vulnerability is can be scary at first.
Totally.
But you're right though, but that's what actually creates true intimacy with someone, where it can be a little scary to speak, for your feelings, and speak up and be like, this is who I really am and this is how I really feel. That can be scary, but it's sort of like working through that is when you get to that true connectivity with someone, that true foundation
100%.
of we're together in this. And it's also a good way to see if this person is a safe person for you. If they can hold space for you, talking for your feelings in a loving way, then they're really earning that trust. They're earning the true, authentic you because they can hold that safe space for who you are.
Right. And if they can't, that is very important information to have as early as possible, right? What would it be like if your relationship got off on the foot that you never had to worry or guess or project what was going on with your partner because you knew they would tell you. And you never felt like you had to eat a feeling or pretend something was happening that it wasn't, because you knew you could speak for it. And neither of you found that threatening in the other. That would be really amazing.
That would be amazing. And I think it would also stop so much needless suffering.
Oh my gosh.
Because then we just make up a story. Because it's oh, well, he didn't say this, so it must mean this. And then we convince ourselves of a story that we literally just made up. And this must be why. And it's like you said earlier, well, they should just know what I think or feel. It's well, no one's a mind reader, and neither are we. We can't read their minds and what they're thinking and what they're feeling.
That's right. And we spend so much time just projecting our inner world onto our partner and on everybody, but on our partner in particular. And if we take responsibility for that and we're with someone who's taking responsibility for their projections, it's a lot less suffering for sure.
Definitely. It'd be a lot healthier relationships too.
A lot healthier.
Yeah, a lot more fulfilling.
Yeah.
This time has been so good together. Thank you so much, Tonya. I've learned so much myself, and I'm sure everyone who's watching and listening has learned so much as well. So if you had to leave us with one kernel of wisdom or one insight, whether we talked about it or not, just something that you think is really, really important for us to know, what's that one thing for us?
Being honest and being able to say uncomfortable things and being able to sit with all of the feelings that come up, to around your own anxiety or fear, and in order to calmly share with another person who you are, is the only route to satisfying relationships. So practicing that and taking some risks that way, and really, really diving into what you need to say and preparing to say it to the person who needs to hear it will transform all of your relationships.
I love that. I love that. And where can we find you, and where can we buy your book?
The book isn't out yet. Maybe I'll come back when the book.
Yeah, definitely come back. I would love that. Yeah.
But I share a lot of content on Instagram. So it's Tonya Lester Psychotherapy. And also I have a Psychology Today blog. So it's just Psychology Today, Tonya Lester.
All right. And I will have everything linked down in the show notes and the description box as well. So as always, everyone, thank you so much for watching, and thank you so much for listening. If you feel so inclined, be sure to subscribe, like, rate, and review. And also, if you need some support, check out all the links down below. We have courses and books, and of course, this podcast. So thank you so much, Tonya. And like everyone, take care of yourself and each other, and we will see you next time. Bye.
Take care. Thanks again.
You too.
Welcome to Sugar Pills, a practical guide to self-care, where your host, writer, actor, and producer Candy Washington helps you live a more joyful life with a cheeky dash of pop culture news. Be sure to subscribe, leave a 5-star review, and join the conversation on Instagram @Candy Washington. Let's go!